Notice, in accordance with the new copy regulations, this episode, Quoth the Raven, is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we will feature is kid friendly, the context of the episode is to address adults and informing with said content for them to service to research into as consumers in service of their youth. In other words, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There is a possibility of adult language present on the episode as well, rated TV 16 and up. Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. Hey! This is your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 29-year veteran writer and illustrator and editor of comics, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games. And tonight, we moved up our Friday night genre talk of the day to Thursday night. And if you can't tell from the shirt, the topic is Batman. Specifically, we're going to review 5 Batman animated films. So let's go ahead and get started with that. With Batman Bad Blood. And that is a 2016 movie. Of course, characters are based upon characters by Bob Kane, Bill Finger, and Jerry Robinson, among others. Written by J.M. DeMatteis, directed by J. Olivier, starring Jason O'Mara, Yvonne Strahovski, Stuart Allen, Sean Mayer, Maria Baccarin, and others. Produced by James Tucker, production companies DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and the Answer Studio. Distributor is Warner Home Video. Running time is 72 minutes or an hour and 12 minutes. Released on February 2nd, 2016. That's the physical DVD. They had a digital release about 2 weeks before that. It is rated PG-13. What it's about. Kate Kane, also known as Batwoman, and Batman are both at a warehouse where they are outnumbered and outmatched by a cadre of criminals, led by someone called the Heretic, who wears a Batman-style face mask himself. During the battle, Batman throws Batwoman out of the building, out to the bay as the place explodes, and Batman goes missing, presumed dead. Because of these events, Nightwing, Dick Grayson, is called back home and must temporarily assume the mantle of the Bat, and Damian Wayne, Robin, returns from his monk training in Tibet. Together with Batwoman, they try to find the missing Batman, only to discover there's a much more sinister plot going on. Meanwhile, the Heretic and his cronies break into Wayne Enterprises and steal some technology, and they gravely injure Lucius Fox in the process. Luke Fox, Lucius' son, who's a military veteran, figures out that Wayne Tech has something to do with Batman, steals his father's identifications and identicards and means to get into Wayne Tech, and breaks into the vault and gets a modified bat armor and joins the other 3 as Batwing. It is eventually revealed that the Heretic is in the service of none other than Talia al Ghul, that they have Batman captured and brainwashed via the technology of the Mad Hatter, and that they plan to brainwash a huge number of governmental leaders and dignitaries at a gala event. It's up to Nightwing and the 3 newbies, if you will, to save Bruce and save the day. The plot of this story has more holes in it than a 10-foot wide slice of Swiss cheese shot through with buckshot. Terrible story. I'm sorry. They never explain how the criminals nabbed Batman in the explosion. They never explain how the Heretic and crew break into Wayne Enterprises undetected. They never explain how Luke Fox can get into the vault even with his father's identification cards, because most of the identification processes would require Lucius's fingerprints or his eye identification type thing, and that, Luke rather, being his son, isn't going to be an exact match, and they wouldn't open for him. So I'm a little bit disingenuous there, I thought. And even if you somehow find a way to do that, it should take weeks, maybe even months of training with that armor just to operate the damn suit properly. But he's doing it like a fairly seasoned operative right out of the box. And that kind of made me go, eh. And the reveal of the Heretic was kind of lame. I won't spoil it for those of you who haven't seen the movie. But It was just like, okay, whatever. Um, Batman being brainwashed by Talia. I mean, I do realize that she's a ruthless bitch, but she and her father have a certain code of honor and a certain amount of respect for Bruce. I mean, I'll grant you, she was going to manipulate him enough to get his seed so that she could make a Damien. So I guess if she's willing to do that, she's willing to brainwash him. But it just seems like this whole scheme really seems to fly in the face of that. But I'll give DeMatteis, the writer, the credit. He does address this point somewhat in some of the dialogue when Damien accuses her of being a person who was all about manipulation and controlling others and not having any noble intentions like her father, which I guess is acknowledging that this is rather out of character for her as a character, as a wink to the audience who's more familiar with the characters. Overall, this is just an okay story. It's reasonably well acted, though I do wish that sometimes these casting directors would go cast some actors who haven't played umpteen different DC characters. Specifically, by that comment, Marina Baccarin, who plays the voice of Talia al Ghul in this feature and in the prior animated movie Son of Batman from 2014, which I won't be reviewing this episode. But she's also played Cheetah. She's also played Black Canary, Dinah Lance, and Edgar Mandragora in Justice League Unlimited. She played Leslie Tompkins in the live-action series for Gotham. She plays the voice of Gideon on the live-action Flash series, not to mention her work for playing Deadpool's lover Vanessa in the Marvel movies. It's like, it's not that I don't like Marina Baccarin. She's a fine actress, but there are other actresses who are equally talented and qualified to play some of these roles out there, you know? That's kind of my thing there. And no, it doesn't bother me that Jason O'Mara has played Batman for 10 or 15 animated movies, because that's just one single character role. If they had cast Marina Baccarin, say, as Wonder Woman for that many consecutive animated movies or animated series, that wouldn't bother me either. It's just when you cast them in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different roles in different projects, that kind of irks me a little bit. And it would be the same thing with if they cast a guy. And yes, you can make the same argument about Sean Mayer playing Nightwing, because he's played other characters in live-action DC comic book shows like Arrow. Again, this is not a knock on any of the actors. This is me criticizing the casting directors, who in my mind are just being lazy. It's the same difference if you cast Michael B. Jordan as a Black Human Torch for Fantastic Four, then turn around and cast him as Killmonger in Black Panther. It's great that I would have cast him fine as the latter character, but I never would have played the bullshit games of race-changing Johnny Storm just to get a black guy in the role. And yes, I know by my logic, Chris Evans then shouldn't have been allowed to be Captain America, because he was cast as Johnny Storm, Human Torch, in an even earlier version of the FF movies. And yes, that's correct. And that would sadden me, but I have to be consistent in my logic. It would be sad that we wouldn't have Chris Evans as Cap, but I do know for a fact that there's some other actor out there who could have done a great job playing Cap, even if it was a different take on the character. But we're going a little bit off track, so let's go and move on. The cast, even though I think some of them are overused, does do a respectable performance. I just don't think the story holds up at all, and it runs just short of mediocre, or just mediocre at best. It is rated PG-13, so rated T, so I'll give it 13 and up for the audience base. I think it runs a little bit older than that. Skews a little bit older, but Batman tends to be a little bit dark. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. It's just an average film. Our next film is Gotham by Gaslight. Based upon Gotham by Gaslight graphic novel by Brian Augustine and Mike Mignola, characters, of course, by Bob Kane, Bill Finger, and company. The screenplay was written by Jim Craig, produced and directed by Sam Liu, starring Bruce Greenwood, Jennifer Carpenter, Chris Cox, John DiMaggio, David Forsyth, Greg Griffin, Anthony Stewart Head, Bob Joles, Yuri Lowenthal, Lincoln, it's not Lincoln Melcher, it's just Lincoln Melcher. I don't know why there's 2 there like that. Scott Patterson, William Salyers, 2 William Salyers in there somehow. Okay. Anyway, Tara Strong, Bruce Timm, and Kari Wurr. It's funny when Bruce Timm does voice acting and these things, but it is cool when he does it. Production companies, again, are Warner Brothers Animation, DC Entertainment and the Enter Studio. It is distributed by Warner Brothers Home Entertainment, and the physical disc was released on February 6, 2018, with a runtime of 78 minutes or 1 hour and 18 minutes. It is rated R. Victorian-era Gotham City. Bruce Wayne is operating as the Bat-Guard vigilante, the Batman, who is feared by the guilty and the innocent alike. One night, Batman sees a wealthy couple from being robbed by 3 orphans, Dickie, Jason, and Timmy. And if you don't know what those 3 names mean, those are the 3 names of his Robins: Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and Tim Drake. And he defeats their abusive handler, Big Bill Dust. At the same time, Ivy, an orphan turned exotic dancer and prostitute, becomes the newest victim of the serial killer called Jack the Ripper, who preys on Gotham's poor and destitute women. The citizens of Gotham believe that the Batman and Jack the Ripper are the same person. Stage actress Selena Kyle, a protector of the women from Skinner's End, which is the prostitute section of town, berates Jim Gordon and Harvey Bullock for their failure to stop these crimes, and then later that night she acts as bait for Jack. It works, but the Ripper gets the upper hand during their fight until the arrival of Batman. After escaping, Batman asks Gordon to help him bring the Ripper down. At the Monarch Theater with his friend Harvey Dent, Bruce meets Selena and the 2 bond at the Dionysus Club. Bruce realizes that not only were the 2 of them taken in by Sister Leslie, but that some of the murdered girls were orphans formerly under Leslie's care. Bruce realizes that the Ripper will target Leslie and rushes to save her, but it is too late. The Ripper has already murdered her. At the crime scene, Bruce finds a bloody Dionysus Club pin, meaning that the Ripper has to be one of Gotham's wealthy. At Sister Leslie's funeral, Bruce is met by Hugo Strange, claiming that he knows who the killer is and wants to meet with Batman. Bruce also is met by Marlene, a drunken old woman who claims she saw him sneaking around when Sister Leslie was killed. Bruce's butler Alfred stops the 3 orphans from pickpocketing him and offers to provide them work. Legitimate work, that is. At Arkham Asylum, the Ripper attacks Hugo Strange and throws him to his own patients who tear him apart. Batman then chases the Ripper on top of an airship in a fight that leaves Batman wounded as the airship explodes and the Ripper escapes. Batman gets chased by police, only to be saved by Selena when he is nearly cornered. After seeing Batman as Bruce, she takes him to her home where they spend the night. After the death of Marlene and discovered, Bruce is arrested, and Dent, jealous of Selena's affection, prosecutes Bruce as the Ripper. Sentenced to Blackgate Penitentiary following the trial, Bruce is met by Selena, who urges him to reveal that he is Batman to clear his name and help save the girls from Jack. But when he refuses, she decides to tell Gordon herself, revealing she has one of his batarangs. Bribing a guard to deliver a coded message, which appears as a series of dancing stick figures to his manor, Bruce escapes after staging a prison fight and meets with the orphans, who deliver him his suit in a steampunk motorcycle. Selena meets with Gordon at the Gotham City World's Fair and learns to her horror that Gordon is the Ripper. While seeking Selena at Gordon's home, Batman learns this as well when he finds a secret room revealing Gordon's gruesome hobbies and past as an army surgeon during the American Civil War. Batman also meets Gordon's wife and accomplice, Barbara Eileen Gordon, with the scars on the left side of her face that have driven her insane, praising her husband for curing her sentence as a woman. Gordon injects Selena with a drug as they fight, but she manages to use her blood and the fair's searchlight to give Batman a signal as to what's going on. Batman rushes to the World's Fair, arrives and fights Gordon into a Ferris wheel. They're called a Fox wheel, where Gordon, driven mentally insane by his time in the Civil War, reveals that his holy work is to rid Gotham from what he sees as filth, from the poor to the criminals, but also immigrants, the illiterate, the prostitutes, and the anarchists. The Ferris wheel lights on fire and begins to collapse. Selena escapes the burning wheel, while Batman defeats Gordon by using a handcuff trick taught to him by Houdini, only to watch Gordon allow himself to burn alive. Batman and Selena are saved by Alfred and the orphans, who are now Bruce Wayne's wards. As they escape, they watch the World's Fair burn down and hope that it will be replaced with something better. My thoughts are, I've always had a love-hate relationship with this film. primarily because I've never liked the idea of Commissioner Gordon as the Ripper, and that is not what the story in the original graphic novel is. Um, I do wish that they had either held truer to the graphic novel or they had made Commissioner Gordon's son, James Jr., the Ripper instead, because in the modern comics, James Jr. is a murderer in the Batman verse, and Gordon is trying to cover it up, protect his son to a point, and his wife, who was driven mad by her son's actions and blamed herself, hence the whole being cured of her sins. It would work, but they didn't do that. But anyway, it's just my opinion there. But what is given is acceptable enough as a story, I suppose. And it is one of the better Batman animated films as far as the performances go. And like I said, it's just that diversion from the original graphic novel I don't care for. It is rated R. I recommend for 16 and up. 4 out of 5 stars. Our next film is Batman and Harley Quinn from 2017, directed by Sam Liu, screenplay by Bruce Timm and Jim Craig, from a story by Bruce Timm, based on Batman by Bill Finger and Bob Kane. Harley Quinn, based, of course, created by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. They also credit a number of other creators in there. Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson for Swamp Thing, Jan Jurgens for Brewster Gold, quite a few others in the film for different characters that appear in the show. Anyway, it's produced by Alan Burnett, Matthew Mahoney, Amy McKenna, Benjamin Melnicker, Sam registered Bruce Timm and Michael Uslan, starring Kevin Conroy, Melissa Rauch, Jet Brewster, Lauren Lester, Kevin Michael Richardson, Eric Bauza, Trevor Duvall, John DiMaggio, Robin Atkin Downs, Rob Paulson, Mindy Sterling, and of course Bruce Timm once more. Bruce Timm just has a very short role as Brewster. He doesn't even really appear on the screen. He's just a voiceover point in one element of the storyline. It's funny though. Production companies: Warner Brothers Animation, DC Entertainment, and DR Movie for Animation Services. Distributed by Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. It was originally released on July 21st, August 17th at the San Diego Comic-Con with specific live presentations of the film for a special audience that you bought a ticket for, and then the mass market audience, which was August 14th, 2017. It is a superhero action comedy. What it's about: Batman and Nightwing discover that Poison Ivy and the Pharaonic Man, Jason Woodrue, have teamed up. Much to their reluctance, they decide to look for Harley Quinn, Ivy's best friend and the Joker's usual sidekick, to find out where the duo are hiding. However, Harley has gone off the grid since getting paroled last. Batman leaves finding Harley to Nightwing while he gets information from Argus. At Argus HQ, he learns that Ivy and Woodrue stole the information on Swamp Thing's birth and kidnapped a scientist named Dr. Harold Goldblum, who could help them replicate the process and turn everyone into plant people. The reason they want to do this, of course, is because both Ivy and the Pharaonic Man think that humanity is destroying the planet, and if you turn everybody to plant people, they'll go green, so to speak. Well, now we're green, I guess we have to, change climate control or something. Anyway, Nightwing finds Harley working as a waitress in a restaurant. That was a fun scene. It's called Super Babes. All the waitresses dress up as superheroes or supervillainesses, and of course they get hit on. And well, that's that. It's just a funny scene. Anyway, tailing her, Nightwing does anger her since she wants to live a normal life, but her past as a super criminal prevents her from getting rehired as a psychiatrist. And she gets offered a lot of crappy jobs that have nothing to do with anything other than exploiting her sexuality, basically. Eventually, the two kiss each other and start tickling each other until Batman walks in on them, with the result being that Harley decides to help them. It's all very well done, very well. All the humor is there. It's quite well written. Harley leads them to a popular hangout for henchmen, where she gets the location of Ivy from one of Ivy's old minions named Shrubby, has Min and Max do a cover of Hamilton, Joe, Frakes, and Reynolds' Don't Pull Your Love. The trio head to Bloodhaven. Oh, by the way, Harley also does a live performance of another song. Um, Don't Leave Me Hanging on the Phone or something like that. I think is the name of the song. But anyway, they get the information from Shrubby and they go to Bloodhaven where they're told to go, where Ivy is saddened to see her friend helping Batman. Woodrow fatally wounds Dr. Goldblum to keep him quiet before he and Ivy escape as their lab catches fire. However, the dying Goldblum does reveal that the duo is heading for Wayne White Swamp in Louisiana, where the correct swamp chemicals to hit this process to work are, theoretically. Batman contacts Argus, and then they head after them to try and convince Ivy to stop her mad plans, realizing that even the slightest miscalculation could result in extinction of all life on Earth. Harley resorts to crying to convince Ivy, who was finally swayed not to do it by their relationship. But this does not stop the Pharaonic Man, because the Pharaonic Man does not give a damn about humanity. He really doesn't care about the Earth. He's like, well, if all of us die, so be it. At least the meat bags aren't around, type thing. Anyway, Swamp Thing makes an appearance, informing Woodrow that he would threaten the Green with his concoction, but he won't stop or interfere with Woodrow either, which is kind of dumb, but okay, whatever. As Batman and Nightwing try to figure out how to stop Woodrow, Harley points out that he's just a plant and asks if they have a match. Grateful, they both give her a kiss on the cheek, and Batman just sets Woodrow on fire, and that's the end of the film. In a post-credit scene, Harley has gone back to being Harleen Quinzel, and she now has a reality television game show where she makes contestants run an elaborate obstacle course, kind of like what you see with American Ninja Warrior or oh geez, I can't even think of some of these silly ones that they make you do, but the one with all the water, splash or whatever it's called. But you got to go through that whole thing, and if you get through their obstacle course, then you'll win a year of therapy from a professional psychiatrist. And of course, this is both a scathing indictment of the American insurance system, but it's also kind of a commentary on the reality television game shows that we were making popular in society and popularizing the performers and stuff like that. So it's an interesting thing that they did there. What I thought of it, pardon me, Melissa Rauch as Harley Quinn steals the entire movie, hook, line, and sinker. But the story, I really don't get Nightwing and Harley's flirtations with one another. I just thought it wasn't really well. I mean, it was well written. It was played all right. I just can't see that happening. I don't see Pharaonic Man as just a plant either. In many ways, he's just like Swamp Thing. You destroy his body, his essence will just grow another one. And the thing is, they say he's like an alien life form, the Pharaonic Man, in this thing, which doesn't jive with what I remember a Pharaonic Man being. So I was a little bit, as I remember him, he became a Pharaonic Man because he took some of Swamp Thing's internal organs and ate them. And that transformed him. I know that's what happens in the live action version of the Swamp Thing television series. I thought that's what happened in the comics. So I could be wrong, but that's what I remember. But either way, to me, he would be an ever-present threat and would still know how to potentially, cause this problem, not just by lighting him up on fire. A more logical option would have been to have Ivy turning on Pharaonic Man and make him use the chemicals on himself, just on himself. And the thing is, she does turn against Pharaonic Man when she when Ivy convinces her to stop. And they do have a scene there but they never really do what should have happened. Ivy should have been fighting it, and then either Ivy should have taken the chemicals and thrown them on Veronica Man, or Ivy should have. That's how I would have done it. Or Harley should have, while Ivy was controlling him. That's what I would have done. And it would have destroyed him because, of course, the chemical composition would have been slightly off, and it would just be done. And then whatever was left of the chemical formula there in the swamp would be trapped by Swamp Thing, and Batman would call in some Wayne Enterprises people to confiscate it before Argus gets there to use their own machinations. Because although Bruce would no doubt keep some of it in his vault for research purposes, he would largely destroy this compound. Argus and anybody else would just almost certainly weaponize it overnight. So that's just how I would have dealt with it. But despite some of these minor flaws, it's really an enjoyable film. Like I said, that game show scene is hilarious. It's recommended for ages 13 and up as a PG-13 film. I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars. Our next film is Batman Hush from 2019. Directed by Justin Copeland, screenplay by Ernie Altbacher, based on Hush, Batman Hush, the 2002 storyline by Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee. Produced by Amy McKenna, Alan Burnett, James Krieg, Matthew Mahoney, Benjamin Melniker, Sam Register, James Tucker, and Michael Uslan. Starring Jason O'Mara, Jennifer Morrison, Stuart Allen, Sachi Alesso, Jeffrey Arend, Chris Cox, James Garnett, Adam Gifford, Peyton List, Sean Mayer, Jerry O'Connell, Rebecca Romine, Jason Spizak, Maury Sterling, Tara Strong, Bruce Thomas, Hayden Walsh, Vanessa Williams, and Rainn Wilson. And by the way, Peyton List actually plays 2 different roles in this show. And she plays Batgirl and another character, Ivy, Poison Ivy. And I was like, I just complained about how we had Marina Baccarin, who's always overused. It's like, do we really need? I mean, it's one thing when you're using them as background voices; the characters don't matter. But when you use the same actor or actress for 2 named characters, it's kind of a, I don't know. I mean, I get it. I guess you're trying to save money, but certainly they should have been able to find somebody else to do one of the 2 parts. Genre: superhero, mystery, suspense. Production companies: Warner Brothers Animation and DC Entertainment. Distributed by Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. This was released at San Diego Comic-Con with a live screen performance on July 19th. And then there's mass market on July 20th of 2019. It runs an hour and 21 minutes. It is rated PG-13. Probably should go a little, I would probably go R instead of 13, in my opinion, but, okay, whatever. What it's about. After Batman rescues an abducted child from Bane for a ransom, Lady Shiva approaches Batman to inform him of an unknown Lazarus Pit intruder and requests his help in identifying said intruder. Batman agrees to do so as Catwoman steals the ransom. While pursuing Catwoman, a masked vigilante, or a masked individual, we shouldn't call him a vigilante, but masked individual, shoots through Batman's grapple line, causing him to fall onto the street from several hundreds of feet up, and he cracks his skull. Catwoman rescues him from a gang of criminals who are going to try to unmask him, but Batgirl arrives and chases her away. Batgirl then takes Batman back to the Batcave, where Alfred and Dick Grayson create an alibi for how Bruce Wayne suffered the injury. Alfred contacts Bruce's childhood friend, Thomas Elliott, who is a renowned brain surgeon, to treat the head injury. So he gets the surgery, everything goes fine, and they fix him. And Bruce declares himself ready to be Batman again 2 weeks later, and 2 weeks earlier than Thomas advised him to even be up and around, let alone anything else. So Alfred decides to make him a new bat suit with a padded cowl for better skull protection. Meanwhile, Catwoman delivers the ransom to Poison Ivy, who has been controlling Catwoman with a hypnotic kiss, using pheromone control through the kiss. The masked individual who shot Batman then arrives to confront Ivy about the ransom and hands her kryptonite in exchange for the ransom. Batman then next helps Amanda Waller retrieve Bane from police custody in return for information. Waller uses the special tranquilizers supplied by Batman to stop Bane from escaping police custody and capture him herself. Batman later reluctantly works with Catwoman to find Ivy, and they follow a lead given to Catwoman by that they're in Metropolis. There, Batman confronts Lex Luthor, who is now a probationary member of the Justice League after them helping defeat Cyborg Superman in an earlier cartoon series, about a delivery list of a ethylene compound utilized by Ivy. Well, it turns out that Ivy has gone to Metropolis and has made kryptonite lipstick to take control of Superman and orders him to kill Catwoman and Batwoman. Catwoman then Batman goes and tells her to go get Lois Lane, and Superman's about to kill Batman when Catwoman pushes Lois off the top of a building, and seeing Lois about to die frees Superman from the mind control, and he goes and rescues Lois. After Ivy is defeated, she reveals that she was acting on the orders of an individual known only as Hush. Of course, Batman is ticked off totally at Catwoman. She wasn't supposed to throw Lois over the top, to her death. And Catwoman was like, I don't care. He was going to kill you. I care about you. Anyway, so that's kind of a theme that's starting between Catwoman and Batman. Hush would later kidnap the Joker to persuade Harley Quinn into attacking an opera that Bruce, Selina, and Thomas Elliot are attending. During the commotion, Hush lures Thomas outside and kills him and frames the Joker for the murder, whom Batman finds standing over the body of his friend Thomas, and enraged by what he sees, he beats up and nearly kills the Joker. Commissioner Gordon finally talks Batman down from killing him. Following the Joker's arrest and Thomas's funeral, Bruce deduces that Hush knows that he is Batman. And as such, he goes on patrol. Hush catches Batman's attention and he confronts him, though Hush tricks him by using mirrors. I don't see why that would work, but it does in this story, but it didn't. Whatever. He's not Mirror Master. Anyway, he then threatens to hurt everyone else that's close to Batman, prompting Batman to end up revealing his identity to Catwoman. Bruce then takes Selina to the Batcave where she meets Dick and Alfred and learns of Bruce's son Damian. And the two become a crime-fighting couple. But Hush later lures Dick and Selina to Thomas's grave where they are attacked by Scarecrow, and Dick is incapacitated by Scarecrow's fear toxin, and Hush kidnaps Selina. Shortly thereafter, Commissioner James Gordon informs Bruce of a break-in at Thomas Elliot's office. While investigating, Batman learns of one of Thomas's patients was using the alias of crossword puzzle inventor Arthur Wynn, leading him to suspect that the Riddler is behind the break-in. At Arkham Asylum, Batman goes to interrogate the Riddler, who reveals that he has deduced his Batman's secret identity, while using a Lazarus pit to cure his untreatable brain tumor, which is why he was visiting the brain surgeon. And he took on the identity of Hush due to his lack of respect that he receives among other villains. However, Batman deduces that this Riddler is not Riddler, but actually Clayface in disguise, and after defeating Clayface, learns where the real Riddler has taken Selina, a factory whose name is an anagram of Arthur Wynn. Once he gets to the factory, he rescues Selina and defeats Riddler, who's growing weaker as the healing effects of the Lazarus pit are wearing off. They do have a major confrontation, but with the building about to explode, Batman risks his own life to try and save Riddler from falling into a vat of molten metal. Realizing that Bruce isn't going to let go and will sacrifice himself to try and save Riddler, Selina cuts the grapple line holding Riddler and lets him fall to his death to give them both enough time to escape. Once they reach safety, they argue over the latter's actions, and they decide to call off their relationship due to Selina just being unable to cope with Bruce's moral codes. What do I think of this? Well, I never read the original source material, so I went and researched it online. The movie is much more streamlined and less complicated than the comic version. I think Loeb has way too many additional characters in play that really didn't need to be there. In the story, what I thought I remembered hearing about it was that Tommy Elliott was Hush, and that the comic story was hinted at for a period of time before the reveal that it was the Riddler. But I don't know. I didn't mind the story, but I don't buy that Nigma would ever be able to track down a Lazarus pit, let alone sneak into one and use it without the League of Assassins catching him. They're just the security there is way too tight for someone of the Riddler's stature to pull that trick off. And I really don't know where this whole C-class villain crap came from. They just call him the C-class and just play the Riddler down. Play the Riddler down. Is he really that low on the totem pole of Batman's rogues gallery? I wouldn't think so. When you think about it, he's just as deadly as Joker is in devising death traps. The only difference is that in the interest of fair play, he always gives Batman an out, if Batman can figure out what that out is. This one time, this one scheme, he really doesn't play fair. And in the process, he almost destroys Batman. And in the process, he manages to control Bane, Ivy, Harley, Joker, Scarecrow, and Clayface and manipulate them all to his own plans and schemes. Tell me how the hell that is a C-lister. That kind of tells you he's not a C-lister. Doesn't it? Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy. But anyway, I think the movie in this case is probably better than the comic because they streamlined so much extra bullshit out that Loeb put into the original story to try and throw you some red herrings and keep the audience from figuring out Hush's identity too soon. It is in the comic they have Killer Croc instead of Bane being the one that is the kidnapper. I think Bane is a better choice. They have Huntress involved in the story. She doesn't need to be in the story. Replacing her with Batgirl was fine. They have Jeff Loeb and Dr. Leslie Tompkins as Thomas Elliot's Day at the Opera. She's not in the movie. That's good because had Tompkins been the date in the movie, Elliot would not have died most likely, given how damn good of an emergency room doctor Tompkins actually is. Keep in mind, this is Leslie Tompkins is Batman's, secret emergency doctor. Whenever Alfred can't patch him up or whatever, she's the one that does it. So, as a general rule of thumb, so if she can't save him from a gunshot wound, I don't know. Pretty darn sure she could have. So I'm glad they didn't do that. And I'm glad that the producers and writer of the movie saw that was making the story overly complicated and cleaned up the excess. The overall plot isn't bad. It's not great because I said there is no way that I'm buying Nigma getting anywhere near a Lazarus pit unless he's also being manipulated himself by Ra's al Ghul or Talia, which would have made sense and could have been retooled to suit the purposes of the movie. Talia could have put Nigma in the Lazarus pit, and then when Selena and Bruce start to have the romance, or Jonesy drives the whole kidnapping and kills part of the story, and it would have made sense. But they didn't do that. And I'm not saying they should have. I'm just saying, if they had done it that way, it would have made just as much sense and maybe more sense. Still, it was a worthwhile film to watch, and I think they did a better job adapting this film or this story than they did with Gotham by Gaslight. And I think it's a better job than the one that I'm going to talk about next, which we'll get to in just a moment. It is a PG-13 rating, so I guess 13 up is okay, but again, I do think it's more of an R. It should be 16 and up recommendation for the storyline. I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm being generous, but yeah, it's like I said, I give it 4 because it's better than the comic book version, in my opinion, based on what I was reading of the comics online and stuff like that. Lastly, we have Batman: The Killing Joke, which was released in 2016. This, of course, was based on the Killing Joke graphic novel by Alan Moore and Brian Boland. Characters by uh, Bob Kane, Bill Finger, and company. Written by Brian Azzarello, directed by Sam Liu. Produced by Alan Burnett, Kohi Kenmotso, Amy McKenna, Benjamin Melniker, Sam Register, Bruce Timm, and Michael Uslan. This stars Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, Tara Strong, Ray Wise, Robert Atkins, and Brian George. The production companies are DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and the Answer Studio, distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. With a release date, this aired live performance at 2016 San Diego Con, and then a few days later, it was released mass market on July 25th. It has a runtime of 77 minutes or an hour and 17 minutes. It's rated R. While out on patrol, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, fails to stop a robbery, but manages to stop one criminal with help from Batman. Paris France, the robber's leader and the nephew of a powerful mob boss, develops a dangerous obsession with Batgirl and starts sending her messengers. After Franz tricks her into finding his uncle's dead body, Batman becomes concerned about her safety and takes her off the case, telling her that she will eventually be tempted to kill the criminals that she pursues. Outraged at this decision, Batgirl attacks Batman physically and verbally, which leads them to having sex. A few nights later, Batgirl tries to apologize to Batman as he is ambushed by Franz and his men, which prompts her to come to his aid. When she arrives and overpowers Franz, who makes her lose control, and she gives him a savage beating, stopping just short of killing him, she realizes that Batman was right, and she retires from crime fighting. Cut forward however much time later, Batman investigates a murder scene with Detective Harvey Bullock and concludes that the Joker, currently held at Arkham Asylum, might be behind the crime. He goes to Arkham to talk to Joker, only to discover that the Joker has escaped and put a decoy in his place. Joker, in turn, then attacks Barbara and her father, Commissioner James Gordon, at Barbara's home. Joker shoots Barbara in the stomach, paralyzing her from the waist down. He goes through her spine and takes Gordon, abducts Gordon and takes him out to an abandoned amusement park. There, the Joker strips him naked and subjects him to torture, including showing him photos that he took of Barbara naked and dying from her wound. There are flashback cuts throughout this storyline as well that reveals the Joker's origins. It is revealed that he was once a lab technician who quit his job to become a stand-up comedian, only to fail miserably. Desperate to support his pregnant wife, Jeannie, he agrees to help two criminals rob us from the workplace. The criminals tell him that he has to use the Red Hood's mask and caped costume, as they secretly intend to frame him for everything. During the planning, the police inform him that Jeannie and their unborn child had died in a household accident. Grief-stricken, he tries to withdraw from the plan, but the criminals strong-arm him into keeping his commitment to them. At the plant, the criminals and the costume comedian run into security personnel that had been jacked up since he had left the place, and a shootout occurs. The criminals are gunned down, and the comedian is confronted by Batman. Terrified, the comedian trips and falls into the chemical plant's waste pond, where he is swept through a pipe leading to the outside. As he removes his mask, he sees that the chemicals have permanently disfigured his face, giving him a clown-like appearance with bleached white skin and deformation and so forth. His disfigurement, combined with the loss of his family, drives him insane and transforms him into the Joker. We cut back to the present. Batman has gotten Barbara to a hospital, and he is now tracking down Joker and Gordon. Batman does find and save Gordon while the Joker flees. Despite his ordeal, Gordon remains sane and demands that the Batman capture the Joker by the book. Batman follows the Joker as the latter tries to persuade him that the world is just one big joke and that one bad day is enough to drive any ordinary man insane. While Batman subdues the Joker, tells him that Gordon has remained sane, and concludes that the Joker is alone in his madness. He then attempts to reach out to him, offering rehabilitation, but the Joker apologetically declines, saying it's too late for him. He then says that the situation reminds him of a joke about two patients in an insane asylum who try to escape by leaping over to the adjoining building. The first patient makes it across. The second patient is afraid that he'll fall. First patient says, "Hey, I got a flashlight. I'll just shine across the gap between the buildings, and you can walk across the beam and join me." And the second patient says, "What do you think? I am crazy. You're just going to turn it off when I'm halfway across." Batman and Joker find that funny together, and they laugh together as the police arrive. The Joker's laugh trails off while Batman continues to laugh, leaving the ending somewhat ambiguous. The comic to me isn't ambiguous. I mean, but they say it's ambiguous. Whatever. Anyway, in the mid post credit scene, Batgirl or Barbara is back in her wheelchair, entering a secret room in her apartment. She says "back to work" as she turns on her computers, and the Oracle icon appears on her screen. My thoughts are, I hated the pre-story crap that isn't Alan Moore's story. That included Barbara and Bruce having sex. I thought it was totally unnecessary. And I'm really sick and tired of writers trying to hook Barbara up with either Bruce or Dick Grayson, for that matter. It just, I mean, I understand the context. It does add some sort of context, I suppose, but it's really not necessary to do this. It wasn't in the comic. It didn't need to be there. And without it, you might not have had the, I don't know, I just was not cool. The stuff that is properly part of Alan Moore's story was decently enough adapted, but all the non-war content really kind of ruins the movie for me. And that's really all I have to say about it. I'm sure it doesn't hurt the film, especially if you're not familiar with the source material, because again, it does have story logic to it. But for me, it just doesn't need to be there. And it adulterizes a story that was already adult enough, and this makes it more adult than it actually needed to be. It is recommended for 16 and up since it is a rated R film. I gave it 3 out of 5, and I'm being generous. I'd really rather give it a 2, but I'm going to give it a 3 because the quality is there. It's just that, when they adapt the actual story, it's done well. If they had just done the story and not added the extra bullshit, I'd have probably given this a 4 or 4.5. But because they had to add stuff that wasn't necessary, it got cut down to a 3. And that is our reviews for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. All the films are worth getting and watching. I wouldn't say that any of them were bad films. I just think that some of them could have been better than they were. I do think the original storylines, particularly the Batman and Harley Quinn story, was probably the best of the lot. The best adaptive one was probably the Hush movie. Was probably the best of the 3 adaptations. But other than that, it's pretty much, Batman as usual. And you get what you pay for, I guess, if you know what you want with Batman. Me, I got these from a library. I don't know if I would have bought any of them, to be honest, just, to have them. I wasn't interested in them when they came out necessarily. I am glad I got to see the Batman and Harley Quinn one. Maybe I'll get that DVD someday to have in my collection, but the rest of them, not so much, to be honest. So, that being said, what else is going on? Well, tomorrow, we will have our guests will be Matthew Sumo and Pete Collins, the creators of the Bardic Verses. We'll have Friday Night Roundtable instead of Thursday Night Roundtable. This week we had our content reversed. and it'll be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be talking about that comic series. And they're going to have a Kickstarter campaign that's ramping up here shortly. We'll be launching early next month, but we're going to take a look at it. We're going to talk about it and some of the other work that they've done, and show you places you can get some merchandise and other things in relation to the show. And that was all our shows for this week. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. If you have any questions, you can reach me on Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven, at Twitter at LewisBrightRaven2, and see some more of my artwork at DeviantArt.com/BrightRaven. You're watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven on YouTube. Remember that there's over 3 years of not story content, but video content with reviews, interviews with creators, and other material to watch. We're almost ready to start launching for season 4 in a couple of weeks. If you have questions or you want to request a commission of artwork from me, reach out to me at quothetheravenlbr72@gmail.com. And if I don't get back to you either on the show or via email, contact me. Try it at lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com instead. Mondays, we will have Monday Comics News and Reviews. This upcoming Monday, there will be some news and reviews, but I also will have guests on Monday. I'm trying to remember. I forgot, but I've got guests coming up Monday as well. Wednesdays is What Did You Get This Week? Thursday, we will have our regular roundtable talk. I believe my guest is Ben Perkins, if I've got my schedule right, but I can't confirm that just yet. I'll get back to you guys on probably Sunday or Monday on that. Friday night is our genre discussion night normally, and next week we will be discussing Picard Season 1, Star Trek Picard, and that is what we'll be doing next week. And we usually have live draws, but this week and next week I won't for the weekend because I have other obligations, including next weekend I will be at Scratch and Spin Collectibles and Record Store in West Columbia, South Carolina for pre-comic book day. But more information on that next week. So if you like this video or you think others might, then please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to help support this content and help me do more content for this channel in the future. As always, I thank you for your support, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.